What's more important for governments, economic growth or protecting the environment? The first one, I think. Maybe? I don't know. Next question, please. Don't let that be you. Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Shane, and in this lesson, we're going to look at 5 Part 3 speaking topics, and I'm going to show you some Band 7 plus answers, so you know exactly how to answer Part 3 questions confidently and effectively. Let's get started. So let's look at the first topic, which is advice. Here is the first question for today. How can receiving good advice change what decision a person will make? Well, let's look at an answer. It can really influence someone's decision because it gives them a different viewpoint they might not have considered on their own. So you can see here that we've answered the question directly. We've answered the question straight away because we've said it can really influence someone's decision. And note here how we have not copied words from the question. We have used the word influence instead of saying change what decision someone might make. Now here's the next sentence. For example, if someone is unsure about taking a big risk, so now we're giving more information, we're supporting our answer. Like starting a new job or relocating to a new city, good advice from someone who's been in a similar situation can help them weigh up the pros and cons more clearly. So this is a fantastic sentence because it's quite long, and in the middle we have got some examples. So we've said like starting a new job or relocating to a new city. And also note how we have said weigh up the pros and cons more clearly. A pro is a good thing or a positive, and a con is a negative. It's a bad thing. So if you weigh up the pros and cons, you think about, are there more advantages or are there more disadvantages? It can also give them confidence in their choice, knowing they've covered all angles. If you cover all angles, that means you think about all the different parts or all the different perspectives of that topic or that issue. And finally, to finish off the answer, we can say sometimes even a small piece of advice can completely shift or change how someone feels about a decision and lead them to take a path they hadn't contemplated before. This word contemplated is a fantastic word, and it just means thought about or to consider something. So if you contemplate something, you consider it, you think about it quite deeply. The previous answer and all of the other answers in this lesson come from our Speaking Part 3 ebook, which has 50 topics and 300 questions with Band 7 answers, so you can see exactly how to give a high-level answer in the speaking test. Check out the link in the description below. Moving on to the second question for advice. Can good advice received in the past continue to be valuable in the future? So this one here is a yes or no question. So yes, it can, or no, it can't. So that's how we should start. Yes, because it often teaches lessons that stick with you. So you can see here we've answered very directly, and then we've given a short reason. We're saying that these lessons can stay with you for quite a long time. Let me think of an example. Now, this is a great little phrase to use if you need a moment to think, and it's perfectly normal to take a little bit of time to think about an example. So don't be afraid of saying something like this in the real speaking test. Let's continue. Let's pretend someone gave you advice about managing finances. Note here how we have said finances, not money. We're using higher level vocabulary, like budgeting or saving early. Well, that's something you can obviously apply throughout your life. If something is obvious, it means you don't really have to say it because most people will probably see it or know it. It doesn't just help in the moment, but it also helps you to develop financial literacy and habits that benefit you long term. Now, financial literacy is a great term to use when you're talking about knowing about money and understanding money. The same goes for advice about handling the challenges of life. Look at this linking phrase we have used. The same goes for. It's a great way to talk about something that is similar, like staying calm under pressure or learning to adapt, because those kinds of lessons can be universally applied in many aspects of life. Now, universal, if something is universal, it means it's everywhere. So here it says universally applied. That means you can apply or you can use those lessons pretty much everywhere in pretty much every part of life. And let me draw your attention to one last thing for this answer here. Look at the text in the red. We've got, it doesn't just help, but it also, This is a great little grammar structure to use instead of saying and. So instead of saying the first thing and then saying and then the second thing, well, you can use this phrase here. It doesn't just, you give more information, but it also, and then you give even more information. You talk about the second point. All right, let's move on to topic number 2 now, which is clothes. Here's the first question. What's the difference between the clothes older and younger people wear in your country? Now, this is a common type of question that you'll get in Speaking Part 3, where you need to compare two things or make a comparison. So you need to talk about both older and younger people. Let's have a look at an answer. The main difference is that younger people tend to follow the latest fashion trends, while older people usually prefer more classic or practical styles. So this is the basic difference between the two groups, and then we're going to support our answer and give more information. And note here the word while in the middle, which is a great linking word you can use to join two ideas together that are not the same, that are different. Let's continue with the answer now. Younger people might wear ripped jeans, oversized hoodies, or colorful outfits because they're influenced by social media and celebrity culture. So note here how we have given some examples. We've said ripped jeans, oversized hoodies, or colorful outfits. But just be careful in speaking. Try not to get into a habit of always listing things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You should only do it sometimes if relevant, if it's going to help your answer. Let's keep going. On the other hand, is a great linking phrase to show the examiner, okay, I've finished with this point, now I'm moving on to the next point. On the other hand, older people often choose clothes that are more simple and comfortable, like neutral colored shirts or tailored trousers. I think it also comes down to priorities. Now you note here that in this answer, most of the sentences are quite long, and that's great. We're showing the examiner we can make complex sentences, but it's also okay to sometimes make more simple sentences or shorter sentences. You should try to have a mix of the two, some simple sentences and some more complex sentences. Older people may focus more on practicality, while younger people care more about impressing their peers and expressing their personality through their style. All right, let's move on to the second question now, which is how can the fashion industry impact the environment? So this is a bit of a harder question, and it's a question that you might get in part 3 if you're a higher level. So let's have a look at an answer. Well, it has a huge effect on the environment, especially with the rise of fast fashion. So again, we're answering the question directly. We're saying it has a big effect. It has a big impact. It's a fact that manufacturing clothes isn't simple. So again, we've got a simple sentence here, and then we're going to give some more information. It requires a huge amount of water, energy, and chemicals. On top of that, fast fashion encourages people to buy cheap, low-quality clothes that are worn only a handful of times, which has led to massive amounts of clothing being disposed of in landfills. Now note the word there, handful. A handful of times means not many times. So that's a great piece of vocab you can use. And note at the end of this sentence, we've said disposed of. So instead of just saying thrown away, we have used a higher level, more professional piece of vocabulary to dispose of something, to get rid of something. Another issue is pollution. Look at that, very, very simple, but it's very clear that now we're moving on to the next point we're going to talk about. I saw a documentary about this the other day. Now, this is a great way to expand or support your answers in speaking part 3. Talk about your experiences. What have you seen? What have you heard? So I saw a documentary about this the other day, and it was talking about the fact that dyeing fabrics releases harmful chemicals into rivers, and transporting clothing around the world creates tons and tons of carbon emissions. That phrase there, tons and tons, just means a lot, a very, very, very big number. Let's move on to the third topic now, which is everyone's favorite, food. Here's the first question. How does diet affect a person's health? So it sounds like a pretty simple question, but let's have a look at a high-level, well-structured answer. Diet plays a fundamental role. If something is fundamental, it's really, really important, and you need that thing in a person's health and impacts everything from physical health and body weight to chronic disease risk and mental health. So again, we've started off with a very direct answer. Eating a well-balanced diet filled with fruits, vegetables, and whole grains and lean proteins helps the body function properly and can contribute to a longer, healthier life. Now, the word or the phrase well-balanced diet is a great collocation that you often hear when it comes to food. It simply means that you are getting enough of what you need. So you're getting enough carbohydrates, you're getting enough fats, you're getting enough protein, minerals, and vitamins. On the other hand, we're using a discourse marker here. We're showing the examiner, okay, we finished with this point. Now we're moving on to something different. On the other hand, a diet high in processed foods, sugars, and unhealthy fats can lead to obesity, heart disease, diabetes, and other health issues. Now, note here how we have said high in. We haven't just said a lot of. We're using another great piece of vocabulary, high in. Unfortunately, most people choose the latter. Now, this is a great way to start a sentence and show the examiner you have a higher level of vocabulary. You start with an adverb, unfortunately, and then you give more information. Alternatively, if you were talking about something good, you could say fortunately, and then continue and give more information. And also note here the word latter. If you say the latter, that means the last thing that you have talked about. So unfortunately, most people choose the latter. And in this case, latter is referring to a diet that is high in processed foods, because we've talked about two diets. The first one was a well-balanced diet, and the second one is the diet that's high in processed foods. So let's continue. Choose the latter, which is why in the modern world, the vast majority of people are overweight and or unhealthy. If you're enjoying this lesson and you're preparing for IELTS, make sure you check out our preparation course, which is in the description below, because it's going to teach you everything you need to know to get a very high band in the IELTS test. Okay, so let's go back to food. Here's the second question. How has globalization affected the variety of food available in different countries? Well, we can start with a very short, to the point sentence. It's had a huge impact. And then we give more information. These days, it's easy to find international cuisines like sushi, pasta, or tacos in places where they wouldn't have been common just a few decades ago. So have a look at that word decade. Decade is a great word to use, and it means 10 years. And in this case, we've added an S to the end of decade, so that means we're talking about more than one decade, maybe 2 decades, 20 years, or 3 decades, 30 years. This is largely because of improved transportation and trade, which make it possible to import ingredients and products from all over the world. Now, this word largely is a great word, and it simply means mostly. So it's mostly because of we've got better transport and trade now. The spread of global restaurant chains has also played a part and introduced people to new types of food, sometimes even adapting them to what the locals like. Now, you might be thinking, well, what does that mean? Well, this is a great time to give an example. Take, for example, KFC in Asia. Now, most students, especially lower level students at that band 5 or 6 level, will simply say, for example, dot, dot, dot. But if you say take, for example, KFC in Asia, this is a more professional and polished way to give an example or to start an example. So, KFC in Asia, where it often serves rice as a staple side dish, but rice would not be available in the West. Moving on to the fourth topic now, which is hobbies. Here is the first question. What are some common hobbies that people in your country have? Now, this is also another very common type of question that you get in part 3. The examiner will ask you something about the people in your country. So let's have a look at an answer. Obviously, technology has become an integral part in the lives of most people nowadays. So many people, especially younger people, have digital hobbies, which include, video gaming and interacting with each other online. Now, the word integral means very, very important. From what I've seen, outdoor activities have become less popular as the vast majority of people are opting to spend their time indoors now. Now, this is a great piece of grammar and a great way to start your sentence, from what I've seen. So if you want to talk about your own experience, what you have seen, well, you can simply say, from what I've seen, and then you give more information. And look at the word opt. Opt means to choose. So if you opt to spend your time indoors, you're choosing to spend your time indoors. However, another great discourse marker, it's telling the examiner, now you're going to move on to something different. So however, for those who do enjoy spending time outside, the most common pastimes include hiking and camping. Now, pastime is just another way to say hobby. In my opinion, as someone who is interested in health. Now, this is another great piece of grammar. As someone who is. If you want to talk about yourself or even talk about someone else, you can use this phrase. So, as someone who is interested in health, as a student, as someone who likes making coffee, okay, you can really use it in many different ways. These types of activities are the best choice as they provide the best of both worlds. This is an idiom. If you get the best of both worlds, that means you get the advantages from two different things. And in speaking, you should be using idioms, but only where it's natural. Don't try to use too many, otherwise your speaking might sound a bit strange and unnatural. And then we describe what those two different worlds are: physical exercise and time in nature. All right, let's move on to the second one now, which is how can engaging in hobbies contribute to the pursuit of happiness and fulfillment in life? Now, this question here is only something you would get asked if the examiner thinks that you're a band 7 or even higher. So let's have a look at an answer. Having a hobby can be deeply fulfilling and increase happiness levels in several ways. This is a great way to start the answer because we're telling the examiner we're going to talk about several different ways. First, they allow individuals to escape from daily life pressures and alleviate stress, which appears to be on the rise, especially for younger people. Now look at that word first. It's a great way to tell the examiner, okay, I'm going to talk about my first point now. Also, look at the word alleviate. If you alleviate something, you reduce it. So here we're talking about alleviating stress. That means we're reducing stress. And this word here, appear, I really like this word because sometimes we might not know something for sure. And if you say the word appear, that means it looks like. So it looks like that stress is on the rise, it's going up for young people, but we don't really have any statistics or data to back that up. This is because taking part in something enjoyable helps shift their focus away from worries and distracts them with a fun activity. If you take part in something, that means you do something, you join an activity. So if you take part in sport, that simply means you do sport. Now, shift is a great word as well. Shift means when you change something or you move something. So their focus is normally here, but when they're taking part in something enjoyable, it shifts their focus, it changes it, it moves it. Not only that, but hobbies allow for social connections by bringing people together who share similar interests. Now, this is a great way to give more information. You say not only that, and then you give more information. Instead of using a very mechanical, robotic linking word like moreover, this is much better. So, whether it's participating in group activities or simply discussing the hobby with others, these interactions can make people feel more connected and less isolated. So this sentence here is sort of just summarizing what we have already said. And the word at the end there, isolated, that's a great word. And it simply means to be by yourself with no one around you. Moving on to the next topic now, which is traffic jams. Here is the first question. It's pretty simple. Can being stuck in a traffic jam be stressful? So this is a yes or no question. That means when you answer it, you need to start with yes or no. So here is an answer. Yes, it can definitely be stressful. So we're answering the question very directly, very to the point, especially if you're running late or have something important to get to. Now, this word especially is a fantastic word to give an example or to talk about something specific. So instead of saying, for example, if you're running late, it might be stressful. No, we simply add the word especially after we've said stressful, and then we give an example or more than one example. It can make people feel anxious or frustrated because they're wasting time and can't do anything to speed things up. This word here, you can see it is a great word. It's a very common word, but it's going to help to reduce your repetition in the IELTS speaking test, because a lot of students, they just keep saying the topic. They keep saying being stuck in a traffic jam can make people feel anxious. Being stuck in a traffic jam can do this, can do that. But sometimes it's better to say it or sometimes say this. But at the same time, it's an external event that we can't really control. So there's no point in letting it ruin your day. This phrase here, but at the same time, is another great little discourse marker or a linking phrase you can use to add a little bit more information. External, that means outside, and the opposite of external is internal. You've just got to accept it. Stay calm and maybe use the time to listen to music or a podcast to make it a little more bearable. Now, you might be thinking, Shane, you've said gotta. Is that okay in the speaking test? Yes, 100%. That is fine. And I would recommend that you use connected speech like this, because if you want to get a high band in pronunciation, one of the things that it says for band 9 is that you can use connected speech. So it's 100% fine to use connected speech and contractions in the speaking test. And moving on to the last sentence now. Alternatively, motorists could try to find ways around it, like working remotely when possible, or adjusting schedules to avoid peak traffic times. Again, we've got another nice linking phrase there, alternatively. This is a great word you can use to give another idea, which might be a little bit different to the previous idea that you have given. And look at the word motorist. The word motorist normally means someone who is driving a car. And this is how you're going to improve your vocabulary score in the speaking test. You need to use the best word possible in that situation. So a lot of people might say something like people driving a car. Well, that's a bit longer, but only a higher level student would know the word motorist, which is the precise or best word you can use to describe that type of person. Moving on to the second question now, which is how can city planners reduce traffic congestion in rapidly growing urban areas? Now, this is a more advanced question, and you will only get a question like this in part 3 if the examiner thinks that you're a band 7 or higher. So let's look at an answer. Investing in reliable and efficient public transit systems like buses or subways can be a good solution. So we're answering very directly. We're talking about our first solution. Now we should give more information about that solution. So look there how we've said these systems. So instead of saying public transit systems, again, we've used some referencing with the word these. These systems incentivize people to leave their cars at home, and this of course reduces the number of vehicles on the road. Incentivize means gives people a reason to do something. Because if public transport is reliable, if it's efficient, if it's quick, if it's good, well, that gives people a reason to use public transport instead of cars, because a lot of the time if you're driving your own car, you might get stuck in traffic jams, and you might you do have to pay for maintenance costs, you have to pay for fuel costs. There are lots of other costs that come with owning a vehicle. Another approach. So look here how we're telling the examiner, okay, we finished with this first solution. Now we're moving on to another one. Another approach is placing a high tax on buying and using cars, which obviously makes it more expensive for people to own and operate a vehicle. Now note here that we have said car twice. So now we're using the word vehicle to try and avoid some repetition. This strategy has been implemented in Singapore, where, now, I've got to say this is a great way to give an example. Instead of saying, for example, in Singapore, this is a great way to give an example. You say, this thing has been done, or you can say, this can be seen in Singapore, where they, So this can be, this strategy has been implemented in Singapore, where high taxes and fees for car ownership have successfully reduced congestion. So this is our example. Even though it might not be popular, it has been shown to be effective. So to finish off there, we're using another nice piece of grammar and vocabulary, even though. Even though is a great phrase to use when you want to talk about two things that are different. So it's not popular, so that's probably a negative thing, but it's shown to be effective. Well, that is a positive thing. That's why we can use even though. If you want to improve your IELTS speaking even more and learn how to answer hard questions, even if you don't have any ideas, make sure you check out this video right here. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Take care and keep studying hard.